Greetings, liquor lovers. Morgan and Nate back to it. Another weekly whiskey wrap up after the holidays.
A little bit of a hiatus, so thank you for coming back.
Yep, back to it. And since the holidays are here and it's about to be New Year's, we had a thought that we should probably give you some of the cheaper options that you can go snag, bring to a party, not worry about if people are mixing it with whatever they may mix it with. And maybe actually you might do yourself some good mixing it.
So yeah, what we aimed for was anything that was under $20 at our local grocery store, which keep in mind that we're probably paying a little bit higher, being also in Washington with state tax and living on the island that we do. So you may be able to find these around 15 bucks in your own hometown or at a larger grocery store, Safeway or what have you. So what we're doing today is 3 Kentucky bourbons. We've got starting off with an Old Crow. Old Crow is produced by Beam Suntory, so the same folks that make Jim Beam. We've got a Joshua Brook. Joshua Brook's kind of a no-name. It is believed to be produced by Heaven Hills because the person that distributes Joshua Brooks is the same person that owns Heaven Hills, so we're hoping on that. And then we have an Evan Williams Black Label. This is produced by Heaven Hills Distillery, so one of the big names in traditional bourbon making. Evan Williams, we'll start off with that one because Nate's holding in his hand. Evan Williams should be a pretty easy one to find. Their green label is their cheapest, but only by a couple bucks. I'd recommend stacking up into the black label. But if you can find it for only maybe a couple dollars more, they make the white label, and the white label is their bottled in bond. And if you've seen that term rolling around, bottled in bond was an old term that generally used to mean quality because back in the day, you never knew who was making your whiskeys and things. There could be any number of goop and guck in it. Bottled in bond meant that the whiskey maker got into contract with the government. They had to make it a certain style, had to be barreled at a certain proof, had to be aged for a minimum 4 years, but there was also a bond that let you do it for 6 years. But then also the government held on to basically the key to your storage house where it was aging to make sure nobody was going in there and messing with stuff. Now it's doesn't follow the same restrictions, but it still generally means that there's doing a little extra to their product. And it's always bottled at 100 proof. So instead of this, which I believe is 86. So you get a little bit extra fire off of that. And I don't know, I like the bottled in bonds. I think they get a little extra kick there.
And now bottled in bond still means to this day that the feds are coming in.
Yeah, they're not holding on to the key to your rig house, but you're required to sign off on some quality standards.
They're not going in and doing field tests whenever they want.
I don't know, they might. I haven't heard actually.
They probably are.
So Evan Williams bourbon they use was pretty common in Kentucky. It would be a sour mash. You may have seen that. Basically what that means is when they are fermenting their mash, they save some of it and put it in the next batch to try to maintain a balanced flavor throughout the entire time. If you see a sweet mash on your labels, that means basically every time they ferment it, they're doing it from the start. So there can be, unless you're really particular in how you make your mix, your fermentation, your yeast, things like that, temperatures, it's harder to maintain a level of flavor consistency over a brand.
Now, can you taste the sour mash difference? I feel like whenever it says sour mash, I don't know if I'm just imagining that I can taste like certain notes, or is it purely just about the build before bottling?
Usually, mostly it's from the build, but from the flavor, it wasn't actually sour. It's like sourdough. If you leave a little bit of your yeast behind to start the next batch, it's exactly the same philosophy to a sour mash.
So you could have a bourbon mother.
Yeah, basically.
Excellent.
Evan Williams, I like Evan Williams. For a cheap bourbon, it's one of my favorite cheap bourbons. Good for mixing. If you add an ice cube to this thing, it wouldn't be a bad sipper, but I don't know. It's heavy corn, so you definitely get a lot of sweetness. You definitely. What I like about Evan Williams is it doesn't have a lot of that banana that I get like from Jack Daniels or Jim Beam. So this is more of like a very traditional, caramely, woody, but light because it's only aged for so long and it's mostly a corn.
Yeah, that's really not a bad. I would sip that if.
Yeah.
If I saw it at a party, I would grab it. But like, I don't need to splash any Coke in this.
Yeah. Diet Coke. All these would be good for making Manhattans with. You could do your old fashions with. Yeah. None of these are heavy rye, so not really meant for a Sazerac, but not going to stop you.
No, always go Sazerac if given the option. All right, well that's easy.
That's your Evan Williams.
Let's move it on.
So next is the Joshua Brook, which I know comes from the same maker. So I'm pretty sure it's coming from Heaven Hills. What information I can find is a lot of people believe it is stuff that didn't make the cut to be Evan Williams.
Evan Williams.
The
step cousin.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's not a Kentucky joke, by the way.
Yeah.
Could be. It's a different nose than Evan Williams.
Oh, like candy. Like heavy sugar candy corn, sort of. It's light. It finishes quickly.
Finishes real quickly.
Yeah.
Not as much as of a burn or like a lingering burn as.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's only aged the bare minimum, which I believe is 3 years for bourbon. So I think the Evan Williams Black Label is anywhere 4 to 6 sometimes when they blend it.
So you could say that tastes a little young based on the short finish, the kind of not too much depth to it.
Yeah.
Good sweetness.
But it is a straight bourbon, so these are all coming from brand new, never used before charred barrel, oak barrels. And so I am definitely getting a little bit of that, the woodiness, the oakiness out of it.
And some people would say, people will say like, oh, you buy something like this, it's a cheap bourbon, it's shit, it's whatever. But it may help to remember that there are such exacting standards that, I mean, it's going to be aged for 3 years minimum. It's going to be, the new charred oak barrels. So at a certain point, it's subjective because quality-wise, they've got pretty strict standards.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk saying that even the cheapest stuff we can get now is way better than what they were making back in the 1800s, sort of thing. So much higher quality standards. Thank you, FDA.
Now this is one I definitely would not be mad at throwing in some ginger or some, like you say. I mean, I would even do a Manhattan with this. But if I'm at a party, I'm going for the ginger ale to start, and then probably after 1 or 2 of those, I'm going rocks.
Yeah. None of these would be great just with a big ol' ice cube, probably.
Truth.
All right.
Which brings us to number 3.
Old Crow. Old Crow, the folks that make this is Jim Beam. Old Crow's got a little bit of history to it. A number of famous writers in the past have talked about Old Crow. It's Mark Twain mentions it, and he actually has a little story about visiting the distillery to watch it being made, which is incidentally now the Woodford Reserve Distillery, in case anybody's interested.
Dr. James Crow invented the sour mash process in 1835.
Yeah, so Scottish gentleman came into Kentucky. Speaking of which, if we're talking about heritage, Evan Williams is the name of an Irishman who supposedly was the first to distill in Kentucky as well.
All right.
Late 1700s.
These are legit lineages. Don't be fooled by the price point.
That's a lot of fruity candy right off the nose on that one.
That's a markedly different taste than the other two. For me, it's a lot more woody.
Oh yeah, gosh, that is a lot more wood on that one. I gotta admit, this is the first time I've had the Old Crow. I just went down to the grocery store and bought something that wasn't made by Heaven Hills at the same price point.
It's good though. I'm not mad at that. I would sip that for sure.
It's actually really not half bad.
I tend to like the more woody flavors.
Yeah.
That's good.
Speaking of Woodford Reserve, that does have almost a hint of like that Woodford Reserve, like double oak that they do.
Yeah.
Which, Woodford Reserve, good stuff. We'll have to do a video on that at some point.
Love Woodford.
Right up there.
We'll get to that at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of alcohol.
We've got a lot to work through.
Only so many videos you can make eventually.
Coming at you from the lovely bar at Friday Harbor House Restaurant and Hotel. Come visit us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, either one of these would be a great choice to pick up to show up to your party with. They're easily, after you've had a good time, they're easily drinkable on their own. I mean, you don't even have to have a couple of cocktails, depending on how picky you are.
Yeah.
But I would drink any of these straight if I just needed a cheap bourbon. I don't care I'm run out of, because it's real easy to go pick one up. I would make a recommendation if you are able to find the white label Evan Williams, which is their bottled and bond 100 proof. Should just be a couple bucks more. I think that is a great cheap bourbon. I like almost all of these better than I like standard Jack Daniels or Jim Beam, which are, funny enough, like another 8 to 10 bucks more. So those are in the mid 20s, where these were in the low 20s.
Worth it. And easy.
All right.
Excelente.
Well, hope everybody has a happy new year. Pick up something good. Treat yourself to a nice little sip. And
Bring it to your friends.
we'll see you on the other side.